And we're going to bring you our next speaker, who is a chiropractor and a nutritionalist. However, this doctor is principally an author and a writer, and in my opinion, one of the most knowledgeable authors and researchers on the topic of vaccines. Should you be vaccinated? Should your children and newborn be vaccinated? Well, get the facts. I haven't had my kids vaccinated, and you may think it's not a wise decision, or what? Tell you what, listen to this gentleman give you the information about vaccines, and then you decide, is this something you want to put in the body of your children and your grandchildren? Is this something that really matters? So please help me give a warm hand of welcome to your next speaker, Dr. Tim O Shea.
So I'm in Vegas, right? I'm at the Monte Carlo, right? Doing the buffet. You always want to do the buffet at the Monte Carlo, right? And so, you know, I walk out into the lobby, and there's like it's Lance Burton, right? So, you know, I go, can I get into this show? And they go, yeah, it's starting right now. I go, what seat can I get? And they go, we'll get you in the front row. I go, cool, let's do it. So I go in the front row, and in the front row, Lance Burton's doing his usual thing. He's good. And anyway, he does this one real elaborate bells and whistles thing. He makes a Corvette turn into an elephant or whatever he did. And then it's like everybody's cheering, and it got really quiet. And Lance Burton goes, you know, I could tell you how I do. No, I'm saying this wrong. Some guy from the back yells out, how did you do that? And Lance Burton goes, well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. And there's a pause. And then the guy from the back yells, tell my wife. It's probably the last joke I'm going to tell, but certainly delighted to be here as a guest of Paymon and to be a part of this event. I'm Dr. Tim O Shea from San Jose, California. My fields are holistic nutrition as well as vaccines. I have 2 full-day seminars on these topics. One of them I just did across the street yesterday. The one on vaccines. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk a little bit about swine flu vaccine, and we're going to frame it in the context of vaccines in general. Then we're going to talk a little bit about holistic nutrition and detoxification. This is my website, thedoctorwithin.com. This site has been around for 10 years. It's a collection of really chapters, monographs on a variety of topics: holistic nutrition, alternative medicine, immunology, chiropractic, and weird things of this nature. Now, I have been lecturing on vaccines for 10 years, and I've published 13 or 14 different editions of my book. I have to keep rewriting it every year because so much is happening in this field of vaccines that is generally kept out of mainstream media. So if you're getting all your information about vaccines from mainstream media, you really have little awareness of what's really going on in that field. My advice to people in general is just turn off mainstream media. Have a life. Mainstream media does not determine your life. Throw your TV out. Stop bringing newspapers and magazines into your house. You do not need their permission to live your life. Now, I've been lecturing on the topic of vaccines, as I said, for some 10 years, all over the world, really. And I've come to notice that in the mind of most people who are semi-aware of whatever, there's this kind of general chaotic noise going on in the back of their minds about, well, is there something wrong with vaccines? Like, is there something about autism? Is there something about mercury? Isn't there some kind of dangers of vaccine injuries? Gee, I really don't know for sure. I'm a young parent, I have this little baby that just got born. And so I really think there's a lot of people are like that, but here's the problem, what I'm trying to address here. Most people who think like that, then what is their action step following that? Their action step is, the default is, well, I'll just follow my doctor's advice and I will vaccinate until I learn more. That's the default. I don't know, I don't understand, I can't make an informed decision, so until I find out, I will vaccinate my kid. My opinion is, let's change the default. Do not vaccinate your kid until you do have the information to make an informed decision. That's my opinion. Now the textbook that goes with the seminar, the difference with this textbook is that this is not the chiropractic view on vaccines. This is not the alternative medicine, Berkeley, Santa Cruz-y, new agey, touchy-feely view on vaccines, okay? This is, my sources are mainstream medicine, mainstream science, mainstream law. The other difference about this book and other books like this in the genre of problems with vaccines is that every single fact that I state, every statistic that I cite is noted within that paragraph. So this little book of 200 pages is like 300 references. But my sources are mainstream. It is from mainstream medicine, mainstream science, mainstream law that the objections to our current vaccines policy are coming from. So my goal really here is to introduce young parents or people who know young parents, who have young children, to be introduced into this subject of problems with vaccines, and to provide them with information so that they can make an informed decision instead of just following along mindlessly with the crowd. Now, one topic that I cover pretty thoroughly in the seminar is money and vaccines. So I just wanted to share a couple of concepts about that with you. In 1993, for example, we spent $3 billion a year in the whole world on vaccines, okay? $3 billion a year globally on vaccines in 93. Now, I trace year by year as that number rose from 3 to 6 to 8 to 15 to 20. All bets were off after 9/11 with the bioterrorist threats. It's very hard to ascertain the extent of expenditures worldwide with vaccines, but I can just tell you, my best guess from my research is that globally today we're spending about $50 billion a year in vaccines. Okay, so I just mentioned this to show the enormous motivation, economic and otherwise, behind every year more and more vaccines. Now, people used to come to my seminars or email me, and they used to go, Dr. O'Shea, I really think that vaccines are just another way to, control the population, da-da-da. And I'm like, yeah, what time is it? God, conspiracy, black helicopters, I'm out of here, whatever. And, but like, the more I think about it, and the more I'm going to show you today, it's like, well, consider this. From the time of Adam and Eve to the time of Wild Bill Hickok, that's how long it took us to get 1 billion people on Earth. You got that? Okay, so here's a chart, shows 1 billion, 2 billion, all the way down. Today, we're about to turn 7 billion people, okay? There's too many people, The people who really run things have decided that there's too many humans on the planet. Now, so I call this the great winnowing. Now, it's not really as extreme, extravagant notion as you might think. Now, many of you might have seen this article that was in Reuters about 2 weeks ago. Bill Gates says Friday he would spend $10 billion over the next decade on vaccines. Did you guys see this? So then, it was a short article in Reuters, and he's talking about how, it's going to provide vaccines to all the millions of children all over the world, all this altruistic line here. But the most odd thing was when I read the last paragraph of this short article. The last paragraph said this. Gates warned against the risk of governments diverting foreign aid funding for health toward climate change, arguing that health should stay a top priority, not least because better health leads to a lower birth rate. And I'm like, yeah. And then he finishes with, curbing the globe's population growth is critical for tackling global warming. And so then I emailed the lady who sent me this, and I go, what the hell is he talking about, And she said, oh, haven't you heard? Haven't you heard about the video that's all over YouTube? And so I'm like, no. So am I going to do this, or you, George? No, can we turn it on and play this? Oh, wait, one second. Okay, so then I went to YouTube. And I clicked this on. So here's how you guys do it. You go to YouTube, in search, you type in Bill Gates vaccines. How many of you have already seen this? Okay, you will be inundated by, now a whole bunch of websites, they took this video and they put their own, shrieking headlines on top of, above the video, one of which I'm going to show you here. So go ahead, George, let's play this. Oh, I do it? Oh, sure. Oh, that's right, I forgot that. Here we go. And, oh yeah, here we go. Ready? And Bill Gates wants 1 billion dead. Here we go.
We need to meet a new constraint. And that constraint has to do with CO2. CO2 is warming the planet. And the equation on CO2 is actually a very straightforward one. If you sum up the CO2 that gets emitted, that leads to a temperature increase. And that temperature increase leads to some very negative effects. The effects on the weather, perhaps worse, the indirect effects in that the natural ecosystems can't adjust to these rapid changes, and so you get ecosystem collapses. Now, the exact amount of how you map from a certain increase in of CO2 to what temperature will be and where the positive feedbacks are, there's some uncertainty there, but not very much. And there's certainly uncertainty about how bad those effects will be, but they will be extremely bad. I asked the top scientists on this several times, do we really have to get down to near zero? Can't we just cut it in half or a quarter? And the answer is that until we get near to zero, the temperature will continue to rise. And so that's a big challenge. It's very different than saying, we're a 12-foot high truck trying to get under a 10-foot bridge and we can just sort of squeeze under. This is something that has to get to zero. Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we...
Okay, now...
We need to meet a new constraint.
So listen now, we're going to do
care,
that again.
Reproductive health services.
No,
We could lower that by perhaps...
Here we go.
The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about $9 billion.
Okay. Now, what he's going to say, I'll play it again, but here's what he's going to say. He's going to say, if we do a really good job on health care, reproductive health care, meaning abortions, right? And what was the third one? And vaccines, duh. Yeah. Then we can bring this down, you know, 1 billion people, okay, or 15%. By this down, he's talking about global population. So I'll play it one more time to make sure that you hear it right. Make sure I hear it right.
Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we see an increase of about 1.3.
New vaccines, reproductive health care, and health care, those are the how do I get this to full screen, please? Oh yeah, I remember, F5. Okay. Those three areas are his plans for reducing global population 15%. Now, I watched that video about 50 times. Now, in addition to that, oh, sorry, there we go. Yeah, very good, thank you. In addition to that sort of shocking news, first of all, what was that? That was the TED conference in Long Beach about 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. You know, cost $5,200 to walk into that room. You have to be approved to go to that seminar. You have to apply to go to that seminar. But I always suspected about, you know, because Gates has been investing billions in vaccines for the last 10 years. He was the first one to invest in AIDS vaccine, but they used to say he donated. He donates. He doesn't donate. This is an investment, okay? But this is the most shocking thing of all, that what all these people have been saying to me all this time, now it seems that like it had some basis in truth. To control vaccines and healthcare as a reason, as a method for reducing global population. I mean, some of the stories people tell me about what goes on at Kaiser and in other hospitals, you know, I don't doubt it for a minute about healthcare. Okay, now I want to talk briefly about the increase in the number of vaccines in the past 2 decades, let's start out with. So when I was a kid, we got like 4 or 5 vaccines. So if you're like my age, so did you. If you were a baby growing up in the 1980s, it was up to about 20 vaccines by the time you were 18, right? During the time that I was doing most of my research, original research in the mid and late 90s, it held very steady. The mandated schedule, or the Well Baby program, or shot day, was about 40 vaccines for the longest time. Now, after 9/11, all bets were off, okay? It's been a revolving door ever since then. Every few months, some are put on, some are taken off, but the trend is up, up, and up. 2004, 53, 2006, 63. Today, a child who is following the Well Baby program, getting all his shots by age 18, is getting 68 vaccines. Did I make this up? No, this is right on the CDC website. You can read it yourself. Now, I can do this in about 2 minutes. Here they are. Ready? You don't have to write this down. This is in your textbook, okay? But it's also off the CDC website. On the day of birth, the child gets a hepatitis B vaccine. Short version of this is, that kid has a 50-50 chance today that Hep B vaccine will contain mercury in it. If it does, it is 30 times the EPA adult safe level of mercury on the first day of life. He gets the same shot then between 1 and 2 months. Then at 2 months, he gets 7 vaccines on one day: DPT, polio, Haemophilus influenzae, Prevnar, and Rototec. At 4 months, he gets the same 7. At 6 months, he gets the same 7 less 1. Now here's the new one. Here's the new one. This started like 4 or 5 years ago. The flu shot, they finally got it added to the mandated schedule. They started out, a little baby of 6 months old gets a flu shot, and then 1 every year thereafter till he's 18. That's the new mandate. Continuing, 6 to 18 months, he gets the Hep B and the polio shot in one day, 2 vaccines there. 12 to 15 months, he gets 6 vaccines. 12 to 23 months, he gets 2 Hep A shots during that period. 15 to 18 months, another DPT, for a subtotal of 36 vaccines by the time the kid is 18 months of age. But wait, there's more. 4 to 6 years, on one day he gets 8 vaccines, DPT, varicella, MMR, polio. 11 to 12 years, during that period he gets the TDP, the MCV4, meningococcal, and 3 doses of the human papillomavirus, for a grand total of 68 vaccines by the time the kid is 18 years old. This makes our children in the US not only the most vaccinated children in the world, but the most vaccinated children in the history of the world. Even today, there is no other country on earth who pursues such an aggressive policy toward vaccines. Do they work? Does the health of American children reflect this enormous number of allergens? Our children are fatter, sicker, and dumber than they have ever been before in history. I do not make that statement to be provocative in any way. I have abundant documentation that can back up each one of those adjectives. For example, 37% of our children are obese. That doesn't mean overweight. That's 60% of them are overweight. Obesity is an entire different item altogether. Degenerative diseases among young people, they are not slightly increasing. They're skyrocketing, all of them. In the last 8 years, the SAT index has been artificially recentered so it won't look as though kids are as dumb as they really are. I go into each one of these areas individually on my site. 14% of US children today are enrolled in a learning disability program. That's not to say that way more than that are learning disabled. I mean, ask your son who's in the 11th grade where Scandinavia is. And this fact that we're currently hearing from so many quarters, this will be the first generation of young people who will not live as long as their parents' lifespan. We're hearing that from many quarters. This is just a few of these facts that I have. So, autism, neurological disorders, asthma, cancer, diabetes, influenza, allergies, arthritis. I mean, think about it. If you're my age and you think back to the way you were when you were in your 20s and your friends were in their 20s, man, we were resilient. We were tough, Young people today, they're not strong. They don't have a good immune system. They can't focus. They can't, and physically, unless they're on some special kind of program, you can just see resilience and the immune strength is just reduced across the board. Empirically, we can see this. So this is kind of background information to how I frame the discussion on swine flu. So we're going to talk about swine flu in a minute here, but I want to sort of contextualize swine flu in the background to what's been going on for the last 8 years. I call this phenomenon the boutique epidemic. What am I talking about? I'm telling you that what has just happened with swine flu and is in its dying breaths now has happened 5 times during the last 8 years on 5 occasions, whether you noticed it or not. With smallpox, with SARS, with anthrax, with avian flu, and now with swine flu. Here's what happened. First, a new disease threat was asserted. Second, claim an exotic pathogen, followed by unrelenting, unsupported media hysteria, right? But wait, there is hope of salvation. What is it? In the wings, drugs and vaccines. We spend the money on the drugs and vaccines, and then what happens after that? Exactly what's happening now, poof, it disappears like it never happened, okay? So, I just a couple words on smallpox. Am I going to do this? Yeah, I guess I am. A couple words on smallpox, because that was the first one that set the pattern, the new pattern. Now, smallpox was the first vaccine that we administered in this country. We administered smallpox vaccine to every child between 1902 and 1971. So if you were a baby before 1971, you got that same mark on your arm that I got, okay? That was smallpox, ready? Now we stopped in 1971. Why? Because the vaccine didn't work, and you could die from the vaccine. They finally figured that out, okay? So we didn't hear much about smallpox until, George Bush and his friends blew up the World Trade Center. Oh, suddenly, everything is different. Everything has changed after that. Within 2 months, we have the bioterrorist threats. The bioterrorist threats. So every few months, post 9/11, now we have increasing vaccines. Now, the first one that happened was the bioterrorist threat 2 months following post 9/11. Now, what is that? Oh, wow. Now those people are going to launch bioterrorist threats against the United States. You see, they've already started with the World Trade Center, right? And so, in fact, I think they're swimming over on the backs of camels across the Atlantic right now. No telling. Now, we don't know what they are, but what we're going to prepare for is smallpox. So we are going to make sure that every citizen has enough smallpox, that we all have a dose of smallpox to protect us from this bioterrorist threat. We learned that the culture medium for the new smallpox vaccine sort of changed. Now we're going to use the cells from aborted human fetus as the new culture medium for the new post-9/11 smallpox. Long story short, I have a whole chapter on this on my website. You can read it. Smallpox bringing a dead disease back to life. We spent $3 billion on smallpox vaccine. The contract went to 3 companies, Acambus in England, Aventis in France, and Wyeth in the US took up the slack. Now, as soon as the money was spent, then various facts came to light that collapsed the house of cards, and it dissipated and disappeared. The first one of those facts that came to light was they discovered that anyone who has a propensity for eczema, the vaccine is contraindicated for them. Here's how they discovered it. Some guy was researching babies with eczema, and he observed what happened when they shot them up with the new smallpox vaccine. He published these photos on the CDC websites. Here are 3 of them. You see CDC. So now these are little babies who have eczema who subsequently got the new smallpox vaccine. And they go, well, gee, maybe we better not give it to people with eczema. What do you think? So they stopped that. Then the final nail in the coffin, I think, was, the relation with heart disease. Duh. Like, what does 1 out of 2 people who dies in this country dies from? Heart disease. So anybody on heart medication with heart disease is, precluded. Anyway, it disappeared. It faded out. So they said, we're pulling the plug on the smallpox vaccination program in 2003, right? When they did that, this is my take on this. I call it the case of the disappearing threat. Okay, and what does that mean? I go, well, doesn't it seem curious that the vaccine program was abandoned because the vaccine was proven unreliable? Really? Just because we couldn't figure out a vaccine that was reliable, therefore, the threat disappears. What a polite pathogen that was to back off the human race because we couldn't find a vaccine. What happened to the bioterrorist threat? And nobody else ever noticed that obvious fact. Okay, so I don't have time to go through the same pattern, the same pattern that I just told you about the boutique epidemic with SARS, with anthrax, with avian flu, but this is on my website, so you can read that. Now, let's bring it up to date with the swine flu. Now, I have 4 articles. I followed this all along from April 2009. I followed it all along because I saw the pattern from the very beginning. Actually, in this book, which came out 4 months before the new swine flu occurrence, I predicted that it was going to happen. I just didn't know the name of it because I saw the pattern, but I knew something just like this was going to happen. And it did in April of 2009. There are 4 articles on my website where I trace it all through. This is the most recent one, so if you don't read the other ones, please read this article. It's called Goodbye Swine Flu. So I guess, well, you can read about the original swine flu. I guess I'm not going to go through this. The original swine flu was like in 1976, and it was the worst vaccine disaster in history. 1 soldier died in a training exercise, and they supposedly isolated a virus from his body, which somebody said was a pig virus. No one had ever died for it or even got that disease previously or after that guy, and they created this very rabid vaccine program at that time, the original swine flu vaccine program in 1976. They stopped it after 10 weeks. Why? Because 565 people were paralyzed with Guillain-Barré, 21 people died. So after 10 weeks, they decided to stop the vaccination program after only 50 million Americans were vaccinated. Congress eventually paid $400 million in damages for that fiasco. It was the worst vaccine disaster in US history. So this is why it was amazing to me in April why they would use that same name again with a track record like that. It never existed in the first place, you know? And it's just how cheeky they are, because they realize nobody reads. Nobody remembers, you know? So like, okay, so you remember this, I mean, the first 4 days I saw this whole thing coming. I was writing about this right away. What was the story? Okay, like hundreds and thousands of Mexicans in this obscure area of Mexico like suddenly got this new disease, right? And right in the first 4 days they were using that word pandemic, and I go, this virgin is pregnant, definitely. Americans are going to be dying. Americans are going to be dying. And remember that one girl down in Texas? She died on cue, remember, like the next day? And there was she was like a teacher, or she was like a legal teacher too. But there was one curious paragraph at the end of that article. What did it say? She has an undisclosed medical condition. Okay, yeah, really? Okay, but as usual, don't worry, a vaccine is in the wings and Tamiflu is batting cleanup. Remember all that? So from the very beginning, I asked this question, well, if they don't know what this disease is, how are they counting all these cases, you know? No pathogen has been isolated as a cause, and it's out in the outback, in the wilderness, you know, in Desolation Row, right? They don't have medical facilities to be able to test people and count to make sure that they're not just regular flu. And they never answer that question. How many people in that same area died of regular flu the month before or the year before? That was never addressed. So, and then you knew too, right away, the CDC, not only the CDC, but all the government agencies immediately in the first week or two, what did they do? They fell all over themselves announcing the virulence, the emergency of this new situation, lest anyone, you know, point the finger at them saying that you were lagging behind to warn us or whatever, you weren't rabid enough, right? Like the CDC came out, you know, that first week, with this quote: swine flu is a respiratory disease of pigs caused by type A influenza virus that regularly causes outbreaks of influenza in pigs. That is complete junk science, and it's a completely erroneous statement. It's just false. The head of the World Health Organization in Geneva is this interesting individual, Margaret Chan. And her behavior makes me ask that question in relation to Jackie. In the first week, she immediately declared a public health emergency of international concern. By June, she had ratcheted that up to, it was now a phase 6 pandemic emergency. She was quoting SAGE, the WHO's committee whose members have the most direct financial ties to the vaccine manufacturers. JP Morgan said that as a result of that one announcement, the vaccine manufacturers stood to make $15 billion. Now, by July of 2009, now this, I'm going to show you 2 contradictory slides that were on the CDC website on the same day. On the CDC website on 14 July, they said, it's still an experimental vaccine. It was whatever. They are saying no safety data in children, and there are no data in pregnant women, okay? Now, the same day, this officer of World Health Organization came out and said, this pandemic is unstoppable, therefore all countries will need the vaccine, and pregnant women are at elevated risk of severe disease and death. I mean, based on what? Their own website just said there was no data. So they're just making up junk science based on nothing. A few days later, Margaret Chan came out and said this: modeling suggests that swine flu has an attack rate of 30%. Once it enters a country, the likelihood is 30% of its citizens will catch it at some point. You see, this is marketing for the vaccine. Now, the H1N1 term didn't come in until late June. And why did that happen? Because the pig farmers, the bacon farmers, started complaining, Obama, we can't sell bacon no more. They're calling it swine flu. So he goes, okay, guys, we'll fix it. Cool. We'll start calling it H1N1. No problem. We got you covered. You know, that never worked because they're still calling it freaking swine flu today, right? Anyway, he made the effort. He made the effort. Yeah, so now I go through this. What is influenza? I go through this whole thing in my chapter, right? Influenza, there are 3 types of it. You can read the website. I'm just telling you, there are 700 strains of H1N1, okay? None of which has ever been shown to cause swine flu whatsoever. So here's the bottom line. I'm sorry for this, but there is no proof that all these supposed new cases that we've been hearing about all this time for the last 6-8 months, it's almost a year now, right, are nothing more than artificial recategorization of cases of regular flu for the purpose of marketing a vaccine, okay? I just simplified it for it. Now there's a group in Europe called the Parliamentary Assembly Council of Europe. They represent 46 countries. And in January, these guys started investigating directly the World Health Organization for creating what they call a false pandemic. And they began saying the exact same charges that I've been leveling against them for the last 6 months. They say it's just a normal kind of flu. I'm not doing this. So check this out. Okay, so there was no screening test for swine flu up until June. Finally in June they said, okay, the screening test is this. Anybody with any influenza A anybody with any influenza A is counted as swine flu, you know, which is like hundreds of cases of that category. They used the term H1N1 in June, and then CBS did this investigative report in October that learned that in July, the CDC directed all states in the US to stop counting cases of swine flu because the reason was this is in my article. The reason was this, because the government has already declared that this is a pandemic and we don't need to waste resources counting the cases. That's practically verbatim. So my contention is the accurate counting of swine flu cases only lasted for 1 month because however many cases that they say there were after July are meaningless estimates because the states were no longer counting. Now, it is true that there are clinical trials of swine flu vaccine that began in August 2009, right? 5 different world manufacturers. Incredibly, none of these clinical trials is scheduled for completion until next April, right? And so, here's the thing. It takes a year to test and, you know, get a vaccine approved. It takes 1 year. This was fast-tracking already, 6 months. That was ridiculous. But here's what really happened. 5 weeks later, Sanofi Pasteur, that's one of the manufacturers in Switzerland, right? They announced on their website, what happened there? Can we get that back somehow? Sanofi Pasteur announced on their website that after 5 weeks of testing, the FDA had just approved their H1N1 vaccine because they had to get it to market before October. And that's the vaccine that they actually used. Okay, so 5 weeks into it. So I mean, like I said, it takes a year to get a vaccine approved and to market. After 5 weeks, this was the vaccine that they began giving to people in clinics. And like when you go in, I was just telling somebody this, you go into Walgreens or you go into Long's Drugs, what do you see? Did anybody notice this? Like every 20 feet you see a sign. Every 20 feet, get your H1N1 vaccine. Like they're desperate to get rid of this. All the countries, no, I'm serious. Like all the countries in Europe, what are they doing now? Do you know what they're doing? They're all giving back their supplies of the vaccine. They're sending them back, and a lot of the states are doing the same thing. Because now with this new investigation, it's just so transparent that there was no epidemic. There was no epidemic. It didn't exist. Am I doing this? Okay, now this is interesting. On 22 September, Associated Press ran an article. They were quoting an NIH, a National Institutes of Health, release on that same day. And here's what they said. They want to give kids 2 flu shots and 2 swine flu shots. Now, this is the Europeans are freaking out over this. They said, what are you talking about, 2 regular flu shots? Kids are only supposed to get 1 flu shot. Remember, there was no new clinical trials done on regular flu. This is called a rider, you know, riding in on the coattails of panic, right? So the kids are supposed to get 2 flu shots, and regular flu, and 2 swine flu. Yeah. Second thing is we're going to have it's going to be ready by October with clinical trials beginning. The only clinical trials began in August, right? And let's see. Oh, this is incredible. They can get both they can get both shots the same day as long as they do 1 in each arm. This is National Institutes of Health. That's who controls the whole organized medicine in this country. Said that. Okay. So now I went to the National Institutes of Health article directly because I didn't believe Associated Press to look up what they really said. And here's what they said. They were saying, Associated Press said, oh, we don't have to worry because there was a 76% favorable response to this new vaccine after just 5 weeks, so we're going to license it. And they did license it. But then I went on the NIH website, and here's what I found. There's 600 kids in the sample size for Sanofi's Pasteur's test, right? 600 kids. They only looked at a select group of 25 of them who had this supposed 76% favorable response, right? And out of that, they made the extrapolation that it's safe and effective, and that's the information they used to the preliminary studies of 25 children after 5 weeks. That's how they licensed the H1N1 vaccine. Now, this is this genius in CDC, obviously off her meds that day, when she publicly announced that a child can get 2 shots the same day, 1 in each arm. Obviously, you know, smoking the twisted cigarettes that afternoon in medical school 101, freshman med school, when they taught her in anatomy 101 that the 2 arms are attached to the same body. So, now, I was in Seattle at this time, and that's when, you know, this is, I really don't have time to tell you how bad this is. I'm just getting started, but I'm telling you, I was in Seattle, this happened. The Secretary of State, Ann Selecki, she announced that this is where we learned that because of the urgency to get the swine flu vaccine out, right, we are going to suspend thimerosal limits. It may have unlimited mercury. You know, this is where we learned that. Now, as soon as she said that raised a red flag in my mind. I go, this ain't new. They're gonna dredge up old stored vaccines from stockpiles, and they're gonna tweak it, and they're gonna improve it. Because I mean, we did that in 2002 with swine flu, and it's probably either gonna be the old avian flu vaccines or the old swine flu vaccines from 1976. Because you know what I learned? Guess what? Batches of vaccines have expiration dates on them, but they never throw them away. They are stockpiled forever. So yeah, new or used, yeah, Okay. So anyway, these guys in Europe, Dr. Vodarg and his colleagues now, representing 46, 47 countries, are calling this, they're investigating World Health Organization for creating a false pandemic, the greatest medical deception in the past century. And I'm like, yeah, I do it. These guys are all medical doctors. They're not dumb chiropractors. They're real medical doctors, you know? It's like investigation, its association with drug makers produce a vaccine for a non-existent epidemic. We talk about sealed contracts, all this. Oh yeah, here's one thing he discovered. The World Health Organization, in order to market swine flu program, in May, they changed the definition of a pandemic. Anybody see this? Okay, up until May, the old definition of pandemic was the disease had to occur in multiple countries at the same time and have a high death rate. Like, that's a real pandemic, right? Now the new definition, as of May, is it's merely a disease whose spread had to be contained. How about bipolar? You know. So anyway, if they would have followed through with, okay, wait a minute, you know what I forgot to tell you? Here's what I forgot to tell you. They over-marketed this thing. They used the top public relation guys using Edward Albernays type of, you know, techniques. They over-marketed this thing. You know, the scenario, the Armageddon scenario they painted was so dire that nothing short of the bubonic plague could have lived up to their predictions. You know what I mean? And so that's one thing. You know, we talk about the American people are comatose and all this kind of stuff, but the one thing that American people are sensitive to is being oversold. And the American people were oversold on the swine flu, and that's why they're saying, we ain't buying it. You know, they're saying there's something rotten in Denmark here, and that's why people are rejecting it and not giving it. So again, here's the context here. The boutique epidemic, smallpox, SARS, anthrax, avian flu, swine flu. So it's no longer important. It's on its way to becoming a footnote. Please read my chapter called Goodbye Swine Flu. It'll tell you about it. But we have to see it in the context of vaccine policy, ongoing vaccine policies. Things are getting more and more intense, the numbers of vaccines. Children are getting weaker. And this is what I hope to provide in my books, with this book and the book that is coming out shortly, which is this book here. So my opinion is that the second lesson that we can learn from what has happened recently with swine flu is this. Expect the next one. This pattern is well established now. The pattern of the boutique epidemic is well established now. The pharmaceutical industry, they're desperate for funds. They're desperate for funds. And so now they have created this format which has been tried and true. It has worked so well 5 times in the last 8 years. So ask yourself, how long will they wait before they feel like they need another few $1 billion? That's the question. So I mean, expect another one. This is the pattern that is now ingrained in our culture. Well, I'm not really going to have time to do this. This is the second topic that I have a complete full-day seminar on. Holistic nutrition and detox. This is the title of the seminar. Both my seminars are available on DVD sets. This is my website. And but just briefly, I'll give you some indication of it. I'm kind of like, I'm in that same legacy as Nancy Appleton. You know, we were so honored to have Nancy Appleton lecture yesterday. What I discovered was, in my research in the mid-90s, that there was a whole legacy of principles of holistic nutrition. Optimum health, the principles of optimum health are no longer a mystery. You know, we always pretend like we're waiting for the next, you know, magic bullet supplement to be discovered so that, you know, it will, you know, cure us from our diseases, irrespective of our self-annihilating, self-destructive lifestyle, right? That's what we all really want. And so what you really learn when you investigate the history is that the principles of optimum nutrition, that can make for the healthiest people who have ever lived, those principles have already been expounded, they've already been clinically tested, and you can discover them and read about them. But they were mostly medical doctors who didn't believe in drugs throughout the years, but because their work wasn't sexy and they didn't have a website, you know, for the most part, their work died with them. And among these, include Antoine Béchamp, you know, father of bacteriology. He was a contemporary of Louis Pasteur in the mid-1800s in France, you know. Totally focused on, if you're going to talk about nutrition, if you're going to talk about detoxification, you want to focus at the cellular level. The only thing that matters is what happens at the cellular level. The word is bioavailability. That's Béchamp from old times. Next guy was Walter Buchanan, MD, in the 1930s. Evolved the concept of homeostasis, which means that what? If given the proper nutrition with no interference, the body will tend toward a natural, healthful equilibrium, the principle of homeostasis. That was homeostasis, Walter Buchanan. There was J.H. Tilden in Colorado in the 1920s. His contention was that there is only one disease, blood toxicity, and blood toxicity is created by this our lifestyle of eating foods that are processed, that have no enzymes in them, that we cannot break them down, we cannot metabolize them. These foods then accumulate in our stomach, in our small intestine, in our large intestine, and then through leaky gut syndrome, these unmetabolized, man-made fats, proteins, and carbohydrates can make their way, infiltrate into the systemic circulation, at which point no digestion occurs in the blood, okay? If they make their way intact into the blood, they can infiltrate virtually any organ or tissue in the body, causing degeneration and breakdown. God bless you. So that was Tilden's idea. Weston A. Price, of course, was the dentist who went around the world in the 1930s. What was he doing? He was looking for the healthiest people on earth, but he was right in the same vein. What did these healthiest people on earth eat? They ate natural foods, maximum enzymes, no preservatives, no hydrogenated anything, but they were in geographically isolated areas who didn't have contact with the outside world, you know, so that and then what happened as soon as roads or a railroad came into these locations, after, you know, these pristine civilizations, after centuries and centuries of no degenerative disease, perfect health, living to be 100, 120 years old, what would happen? Here comes the white flour and everything else, and within a very short time, degenerative diseases would creep into these pristine civilizations. So that's Weston A. Price. You're going to be hearing more about that tomorrow. But I mean, these guys are all in the same, like this silver thread of information, this legacy that's come down to us through the decades. The next guy was Royal Lee. He was right, you know, the founder of Standard Process. He was right on the same page with the value of enzymes and natural foods, and also how we must be responsible for our own health. I got to say that before I leave. You know, with what's going on with health care, you know, definitely in parentheses, in quotes, right? And how, you know, your health premiums are going up and the level of service is going down, and the nightmares that you hear about what goes on at hospitals. Do you think that's going to get better or worse in the next 2 years? And so my opinion is that now, at this time, more than ever, we need to realize that we need to take responsibility for our own health instead of buying into this whole business of the slash and burn, and our only cure for you is what drugs we're going to give you. You know, if drugs could cure us, we wouldn't be so sick. We wouldn't be like number 44 in global health. You know, if drugs could really cure us, we have a $2 trillion a year health budget, and as we're the sickest of the you know, civilized nations. So it just seems to me obvious, like holistic nutrition really realizing that every time you eat hydrogenated oils, pasteurized dairy, refined carbohydrates, you are adding to your toxic load. You are contributing to your own demise. And so people go to doctors, they go to holistic doctors, they go to medical doctors, and what are they looking for? They want their permission to toxify themselves. They want the doctor's permission to continue to annihilate themselves and not to participate in their own health care. That's what they really want. They're looking for the magic bullet. It's too late. It's too late in our civilization for that kind of backward thinking. We have to take responsibility for our own care. Organized medicine is great for trauma. If I fall off a motorcycle, my motorcycle, do not take me to a naturopath or chiropractor, okay? Then they're good, up to a certain point. But for the degenerative diseases, they don't have anything for you. This is up to you, okay? So this is what my website is about, these individual chapters. Bernard Jensen, his work with detox. Edward Howell, MD, he was the founder of National Enzyme Company, the premier researcher on enzymes. And then his protege was really Stan Bynum, and he was my teacher. He guided me, and I did a lot of work with bioterrain analysis, and he taught me about enzymes. And we learned the importance of enzymes in the body, the importance of enzymes in our food, and in any healing protocol. So these are some of the monographs, some of the individual chapters that I told you about on my website. I have this thing, it's called the 60-day program. The 60-day program is just, I didn't just sit down one day and dream it up. It evolved after several years of researching, and I was so fortunate to be taught by some of the top people in the world in holistic nutrition, most of whom died, when they were later on, but I was able to learn firsthand the principles of holistic nutrition. And I learned, first of all, that to heal ourselves, we need a very simple, doable program. The 60-day program consists of an obvious natural diet, no junk foods, those three things I said, refined carbohydrates, hydrogenated oils, pasteurized dairy, right? And then 7 supplements. I've chosen 7 supplements. Now, this is not some kind of MLM pyramid, get rich quickly, whatever thing. I have no loyalty to any company, but I've discovered that the supplement business in general is a jungle of hype and false misrepresentation. Is that a double negative? Anyway, it's mostly worthless. You know why? Guess who controls the majority of the supplement industry, either directly or indirectly? Of course, and then there is another group, then there is a huge group of supplements that are worthless, and then there is another group that are good and have value, and there is an even smaller group of supplements that, in my opinion, give the person what they need and are completely bioavailable. We want to detox the entire system and get that person by himself to the plateau of health that has been eluding him for such a long time. What are the 2 systems of the body that we're going to completely detox and nourish during this period? The digestive tract and the arterial system, the blood system. You do both those systems, and the majority of diseases will resolve if you religiously follow this program for 60 days. That's what I've noticed. So these are some of the chapters. I got to get out of here now. Thank you very much for listening to me.